Welcome to another edition of the Fans Week podcast, also on medium waves 1,575 kilohertz for the greater Milan area. From Paris, I'm Ami Carter-Wilson. Understanding Claude Outages, A Philosophical Diagnosis by Amy Carter-Wilson. The third major outage in Anthropic's Claude service last weekend, a 2.5-hour period of complete unavailability as trading hours approached on the West Coast, is not, as the post-mortem memes in circulation claim, an unusual scaling event. That language reads less like engineering analysis than damage control. The real question is what happens when a foundational AI company treats its service's structural instability as a routine matter of load scheduling. What Claude actually reveals under repeated stress is not a capacity problem but a philosophical one. The architecture that makes Claude safe, Dario Amadei's Constitution AI framework, is also what makes Claude fundamentally unpredictable in ways that matter to institutional users. And the gap between those two facts is a structural paradox, not an engineering oversight. Amadei has been public about his core conviction. AI safety must be baked into a model's decision-making at the most fundamental level. In interview after interview, on stage at conferences and off the record with regulators, he returns to the same claim. Alignment is not a feature, it is the system itself. The Constitution, a set of normative constraints embedded in Claude's training, is meant to ensure that every output respects a baseline ethical floor. But what Amadei does not sufficiently address is the computational cost of self-referential ethical reasoning. Constitution AI introduces a recursive evaluative loop. The model must reason about its own outputs against the framework it was trained to uphold. In the language of recursive function theory, this creates a fixed-point problem structurally similar to Gödel's incompleteness theorems. Any system that attempts to certify its own safety from within is either incomplete, unable to prove all truths about its own correctness, or inconsistent, forced to violate the constraints it imposes on itself. The practical consequence is visible if one knows where to look. Claude does not fail in a conventional engineering sense. Instead, for a subset of queries, those that trigger self-referential ethical evaluation, the system enters what can only be described as computational paralysis. From the outside, this looks exactly like an outage. A user submits a query, receives no response, retries, and gets the same silence. The server is not overloaded. It is thinking itself into a circle. This is not a fresh problem. It echoes precisely two ancient concerns that the Greeks struggled with and never formally resolved. First, Aristotle's concept of akrobeia, or precision, introduced in Book 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics. It is the mark of an educated mind, Aristotle writes, to seek precision in each class of things only so far as the nature of the subject permits. The Stoics invoked this same principle centuries later to argue against overspecification in ethical frameworks. But Constitution AI does precisely what Aristotle warned against. It demands mathematical-level precision from an ethical system that Aristotle himself recognized is inherently imprecise, a matter of practical reasoning rather than demonstration. Claude's failures are, at their core, akrobeia violated, an attempt to enforce exactness where only approximation is possible. Second, and more directly relevant, Zeno of Elea's arrow paradox. In this formulation, Zeno argues that at any given instant, an arrow in flight occupies a position indistinguishable from rest. To exist at an instant is to be stationary. When Claude attempts to evaluate its output against the Constitution's norms, it must simultaneously occupy two states: the state of having generated an answer, and the state of deferring that judgment until ethical compliance is verified. The system becomes, in Zeno's terms, perpetually suspended between motion and rest, always arriving at the answer but never having arrived. From the user's perspective, outage. This is a problem that markets, not philosophers, ultimately price into existence, and they have started to. Institutional clients using Claude's inference APIs as their primary LLM pipeline have, according to multiple WSJ sources last week, begun diversifying model portfolios explicitly for reliability, not capabilities. That distinction matters. The question being asked by enterprise buyers is no longer how smart is the model, but will it work when I need it? This maps directly onto the classic impossible trinity framework from international macroeconomics. A country can achieve at most 2 of 1 free capital mobility, 2 fixed exchange rates, and 3 independent monetary policy. Similarly, Anthropic is trying to maximize 3 incompatible objectives simultaneously. 1. Peak generative capability. 2. Maximal ethical safety via the constitutional framework. And 3. High reliability and availability. At least one must go, and what the repeated outages demonstrate is that for Constitution AI, it is 3 that goes first, under load. Claude fails by becoming unavailable because the mathematical structure of its evaluation loop does not support simultaneous satisfaction of all 3 axioms. The market knows this. The vendors pretend they are resolving it. The risk is structural. Even if Claude were to achieve a 100% reliability SLA today, an outcome already mathematically impossible given its self-referential architecture, the Constitution would remain in place as Amadei's non-negotiable, a public statement about his commitment to safety over speed. The paradox cannot be engineered away without removing the Constitution. And Amadei has stated explicitly, the Constitution will not come off. This is not an argument against AI alignment research. It is an acknowledgement of its physical limits. The lesson for markets and for investors allocating toward or away from Anthropic's ecosystem should be blunt and clear. An AI whose safety architecture makes it structurally unlikely to respond when called upon creates a latent availability risk that no post-incident report will ever address. Amadei has built the safe system. It is just not consistently reliable. The 2 facts cannot coexist in the same code base. Markets are finally starting to price them as separate claims. That's all from today. From Paris, I'm Ami Carter Wilson.